Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's Kyle Henderson along with Andrew Bone. This is Recruiting Show on Tuesday night. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for watching. Please hit the thumbs up
Andrew
button.
Bone. This is Recruiting Show on Tuesday night.
I got something in the background. Please hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe. We appreciate the content. Bone, how you been, man?
Been good. Been a good week so far for Alabama. I think it's going to get even better.
Yeah, I mean, capped off with Monday night, Devontae Smith, committing to Alabama. I mean, he's a 4.3 guy. Alabama tells him that he could get to a 4.2 guy. I mean, this guy must have electric speed. Do you like this commitment? I mean, he's only a 3-star in Rivals, but I mean, if you've said it before, you're getting recruited by Ohio State and Alabama, you're probably better than a 3-star.
Yeah, that's right. Especially if your name's Devontae Smith, you got to be pretty good, right?
Yeah.
I really like Devontae Smith the second. I guess we can say, he's a great pickup for Alabama. Somebody that it's not. This wasn't one of those situations where Ohio State backed away from him and he decided to decommit and try to find somewhere else real quick. This is a guy who is from Cincinnati, committed to the Ohio State. Has been committed for a couple months now, and ever since he was committed, has been in constant communication with Alabama, specifically Nick Saban. I think Coach Saban took a really personal hands-on approach with him in terms of I just haven't seen Nick Saban go that far into really recruiting somebody in terms of speaking to him 3 times a week for the last couple months. I mean, Nick Saban usually talks to recruits every so often, but he has talked to this guy at least 3 times a week over the last at least the last month. So I think that really stood out to him. He mentioned that his cousin Sean Alexander got involved in his recruitment, and I think Nick Saban probably reached out to Sean Alexander and said, "Hey, we want your cousin on board. What do we have to do? We really like him a lot, and we feel like he's a big time player." In terms of his ranking, I keep seeing people say, well, he's a 3-star. Why did Alabama recruit him? And, people say, oh, well, it's okay because Alabama and Ohio State and these other schools, recruited him. Well, the reason he's a 3-star is because the Rivals analysts did not get a chance to see him play last football season. They were, and they thought enough about him to make him one of the highest 3-star recruits in the country, put him at a 5.73 star. They were going to see him this spring at one of the Rivals camps. That was really going to kind of justify things in terms of, finally just not necessarily, oh, he went to a Rivals camp, so let's bump him up to a 4-star. No, you want to get eyes on somebody before you really, elevate them to that 4-star ranking, 5-star ranking, whatever it may be, or even, you want to drop somebody if maybe you've, I guess overrank somebody from the beginning. So you want to see them again. And that's what, that's really what Rivals wanted to do. They wanted to see him during the spring, maybe again during the summer. I've talked to the higher ups. Mike Farrell loves this guy. Josh Hemholt, who covers the Midwest, also says, this guy is definitely, higher than his 3-star ranking. And, I've heard the words, we're way off in terms of his ranking. So even though some other schools may see this as a Bama bump coming up, this is not necessarily, one of those Bama bumps. This is one of those guys that, regardless if he was still committed to Ohio State or if he was committed elsewhere, as soon as, the regional or national guys got their eyes on him in person, he was going to get a significant, bump in the rankings, and we're going to see that. We're possibly going to see him, move all the way up into the Rivals 100. This is a guy who is, 6 feet tall, 185 pounds, can play just about any position in the defensive backfield. And, you go to a program like Alabama, or even if he was going to Ohio State, programs that continue to churn out defensive backs year after year after year, have a tremendous reputation of developing talent. And I think he's going to fit right in down in Tuscaloosa. And he seems very excited about his commitment. I know, people say, well, he decommitted once, could he potentially decommit again? I just don't see that happening. I think, his connections down at Alabama, especially with Sean Alexander, Devontae Smith actually reached out to him, a couple years ago and kind of explained to him about the recruiting process. If he ever needed any help, told him, what Alabama was all about. Derek Keefe is another is a former Alabama player who he has a connection with, and has really talked very heavily about Alabama. So I would certainly not expect him to flip back to Ohio State or flip anywhere. I think he's very solid with his commitment to Alabama. I think the Alabama coaching staff is extremely excited about this kid. I think he's one of the overall top players on their recruiting board. And just because he's a 3-star right now, he's not going to finish as a 3-star. I don't think Alabama fans need to worry about that.
All right, good stuff, Bone. And everyone checking in, thank you so much for watching here with Andrew Bone. We're talking Alabama Crimson Tide football recruiting. Be sure and like and to subscribe to our content. We sincerely appreciate the super chats as well. But the least you can do, thumbs up. And of course, if you want a free 30 days to BamaInsider.com, the promo code is simply Roll Tide at checkout. Bone, everybody knows Devontae Smith is checked in. Tomorrow is also a big day with Dallas Turner. Is out of the Florida area. He's committing tomorrow. You put in a forecast for him. You've talked about him before. How are you feeling about Dallas Turner? And kind of talk a little bit about his recruitment as he is set to announce tomorrow on July 1st.
Yeah, that's right. Dallas Turner out of South Florida, currently attends St. Thomas Aquinas down in Fort Lauderdale. Actually transferred over there after playing the last few seasons at pretty much his whole career at American Heritage and Plantation, where last year he was the defensive MVP of Broward County, had 15 sacks during his junior season, and certainly on track to have a humongous senior year. As long as they're able to play football down there in South Beach. So he's certainly a guy that is a big time target for a lot of programs. Put out a top 5 about a week ago, a couple weeks ago, that it was Alabama, Michigan, Oklahoma, Florida, and Georgia. I really think it has come down to 3 schools. I think it's Alabama, Georgia, Florida. And everybody's kind of going back and forth as to who the number 2 school is. But I think the number 1 school on everybody's list that he's going to potentially commit to tomorrow is Alabama. He's a big outside linebacker. He's 6'4", right at about 245 pounds. Gotten a little bit bigger. Back in the spring, I think he was about 230 pounds. Now he's up to 245. Going to be kind of interesting to see how he develops over the course of the next couple of years, because I remember another big kid coming out of high school that people weren't really sure, was he going to be an outside linebacker, was he potentially going to grow into a defensive end, and that was Jonathan Allen, former 5-star recruit, first round NFL draft pick, All-American in Tuscaloosa, won just about every defensive award that you can. Could potentially be a Jonathan Allen type player. He's got the size, he's got the strength, power, he's got everything you're kind of looking for. Tremendous athlete. He was a star basketball player growing up. Hasn't played basketball in the last year or two, but he certainly is a tremendous athlete, and definitely somebody that I feel like Alabama's going to pick up his commitment tomorrow. He's going to be announcing around noon Central. His family ended up visiting Tuscaloosa earlier this year, which I think was a huge plus. His dad, his mom, I think it was one of the only visits his mom was able to take. She didn't really go on any other trips. I posted this as a little fun fact on the Bama Insider board earlier today. Both of his parents are from the Miami area originally, but his mom actually went to Tuskegee University. So, she knows a little bit about the state of Alabama, and I think she'd feel pretty comfortable if he ends up choosing Alabama tomorrow.
All right, we're talking recruiting with Andrew Bone of BamaInsider.com. Bone, now we'll ask some of the questions. So post your questions in the comment box for Andrew Bone. First question up, and it's related to Mason Smith. Let me find that question. And there was an article that recently said that Paul Robinson asked. Your article mentioned Bama is making a move with Mason Smith. How good are Bama's chances with a very talented Mason Smith?
Yeah, absolutely. The five-star defensive lineman from Louisiana, number 1 defensive tackle in the country, according to Rivals.com. He came out and said the other day that some of the schools that were recruiting him the hardest right now includes Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Miami. Probably, I would say a couple months ago, maybe about 3 or 4 months ago, really didn't even mention Alabama as everyone kind of assumed it was an Alabama LSU battle from the beginning of his recruitment. That's what everybody kept saying. And then it seemed like Alabama fell off a little bit. Well, now they're starting to surge again in the race. Now, I'm not ready to say he's going to Alabama at all. I think Alabama's still got a long way to go in that regard. But the fact that, he mentioned them specifically as a school that's recruiting him the hardest. He's not going to make a decision right now. He's going to take his official visits, kind of enjoy this process. even though LSU is probably, a heavy favorite for him, I still have to think that Alabama's got a chance. As long as they can get him on campus, continue to build that relationship. Obviously Alabama continues to turn out great defensive linemen, and who knows what this recruiting class is going to turn into over the course of the next few months. It's maybe something that he really wants to be a part of. So we'll see. But as of right now, still put my money on LSU, home state school, coming off a national championship. They obviously produce a lot of great defensive linemen and NFL players as well. But I think Alabama's, certainly in the mix, along with Georgia. They're another top program that he's strongly considering.
All right, now, Bone, you've done such a great job during this recruitment process of the Brockemeyer brothers. We get asked about the Brockemeyer brothers every single week, and rightfully so. Anything new with their recruitment? Do you feel that they could be making any sort of announcement as we get to the 4th of July holiday, or is this going to be something that we continue to track throughout the course of July into August? Where do things stand right now with Tommy and James in terms of a commitment date, and also do you feel they are trending still towards Alabama?
Yeah, the Brockemeyer twins, for people that don't know, Tommy and James, two of the best offensive linemen in the country. Tommy rated as a 5-star offensive tackle, number 10 overall player in the Rivals 100, and then his twin brother James, a little bit smaller, about 6'4", 275 pounds. Recruited as one of the top centers in the country. I think he's the number 3 center overall in Rivals. So, both of those guys certainly a top priority for Alabama, along with several other programs. But top 4 consist of Alabama, Texas, LSU, and Auburn. Those guys were hoping to take some official visits this spring. I know that they were scheduled to visit Alabama in April and then return again in June for their official visits. They were able to take in Junior Day in Tuscaloosa earlier this year, so I think that was a big plus for them. They've really hit it off with the new strength staff. Been in almost constant contact with those guys. Kyle Flood doing a tremendous job recruiting both of them. I would not be surprised if we saw a decision happen before the start of their senior season. I don't know how much longer it's going to last. I don't think they're going to make a decision in the next week. I know there's a lot of rumors going around that both of them could be announcing here in the next week, or maybe on the July 4th weekend. I don't see it right now. I'm not expecting it to happen, but I will say I do think it happens probably within the next month. Maybe in the next month and a half, but I really like Alabama's chances with both those guys, and still forecasting both of them to Alabama at this time.
All right, Bone. And again, if you're just joining us, thank you so much for watching. We appreciate everybody being here. So be sure and hit the thumbs up button. We appreciate you guys' support. Super chats, of course, welcomed. All the coverage back at BamaInsider.com. Could be a gigantic week for the Alabama Crimson Tide, so certainly stay tuned to BamaInsider.com. Bone, this question's coming in from Tyler Mason. What's up, Tyler? Thank you so much. Always asking some great questions. I heard Henry Ruggs jumped in and talked to Brian Thomas too, and that he could potentially commit by the end of this week. Now that the dead period is extended, what have you heard regarding Brian Thomas?
Well, one thing I heard the other day was recruiting reporters may be chasing Brian Thomas stories for the next 6 months. So we'll see if that happens. But actually, I changed my future cast on Brian Thomas probably a month or so ago. It was Alabama. I predicted Alabama last summer. I thought that he was very close to making a decision for Alabama, and then about a month ago, we were starting to really hear strongly it was LSU. Well, in the last week or so, starting to trend back in favor of Alabama. So we'll kind of see where it goes. I've heard that there's some mixed emotions going on in the family in terms of which direction they want Brian to go. So we'll just have to wait right now. I don't know if he's going to make a decision right now, but it could potentially happen. But it could also be 2 or 3 months from now. So we'll just have to wait and see. He's one of these guys who I'm not ruling anything out with him just yet. And it's kind of like Kool-Aid, JaQuincy McKinstry, who, he could wake up tomorrow and announce a commitment, but it's very possible. We'll see. I'm thinking that we're going to see one more commitment outside of Dallas Turner happen this week. Not really sure exactly who it's going to be, but I do think Alabama ends up getting potentially 3 overall commitments, by the end of the week or by the end of the weekend.
Bone, I mean, dropping nuggets right there. We're just, so potentially a 3-commit week for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Thank you so much for joining us again. You can watch us, of course, on YouTube. Be sure and subscribe to our channel. I'll also turn this into a podcast. So if you want to check this out in a podcast, go to BamaInsider.com, put it up on SoundCloud. Or wherever you get your podcasts, also feeds into iTunes. Like the name right here. Bone. He's talking about Dallas Turner. We've already talked about that before, so definitely be sure and watch that. And once again, he's asking about JaQuincy McKinstry, one of the most talented athletes in all of Alabama. You mentioned him just a little bit ago. What's the latest update? You said he could wake up tomorrow and just announce he's, his college commitment. Where do things stand with him? And, who would you say that Alabama is really fighting off most for this big in-state commitment?
Well, a lot of people think that LSU is potentially Alabama's biggest threat. I still think Auburn's right there in the mix as well. Yeah, I think it's probably going to come down to one of those three programs. I still like Alabama. I mean, he's an in-state kid, number one player in the state of Alabama, has been heavily recruited by the Crimson Tide for a very long time, has taken just countless trips down to Tuscaloosa. Plus, he has Carl Scott recruiting him, who's one of the best recruiters in the country. So I think this is probably Carl Scott's baby right here. He wants to, say, hey, he wants to walk in the office and say, hey, I was able to, land the top player in the state of Alabama. And so I think he's got a great chance of doing that. Not really anything new. Still kind of the same with JaQuincy. Could wake up tomorrow morning. Could commit by the end of this show. Who knows? Or could wait until signing day. I don't think he's going to take it all the way till signing day. I think we'll probably see something at least before the season. But hey, like I said, you never know. Maybe may see something before the end of this show. But as of right now, still predicting Alabama for Kool-Aid.
All right, well, this is an interesting question coming in from Alabama Black Snake, asking about the tight ends. And this isn't something that we haven't really talked about too many tight ends. And we talked about Hudson Wolf a couple months ago, and then he ended up committing to Tennessee. Is this not a big priority for Alabama? Are there any other tight ends that Alabama might be recruiting? What's kind of the situation with the tight end position?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it has to do with, people want to look at tight end rankings, for the most part and say, all right, well, let's go after the top 5 tight ends. Why isn't the top 5 or top 10 tight ends in the country committing to Alabama? Alabama's recruiting board is probably a little bit different than what the rivals recruiting board says. And unfortunately, there were no spring camps. There was no spring evaluation or there's no summer evaluation. So you really don't get a chance to see a lot of these guys that Alabama's recruiting. And, they won't as part of their recruiting class. And one of Alabama's top overall targets at the tight end position is a guy named Robbie Oots out of Rock Hill, South Carolina. And certainly a guy that has had a committable offer from Alabama for the last few months. They've heavily recruited him. He actually took a trip down to Tuscaloosa earlier this month. Now, everybody says, well, how was he able to take a trip? It's the dead period. Well, he can come on. He can go visit any campus he wants to, not have any interaction with the coaches. If he wants to visit a school, he can go check out any program he wants to in the country, as long as it's not paid for by the university, or he has as long as he has zero contact with the coaching staff or administration, he can certainly visit any school that he wants. So he was a guy who visited Alabama earlier this month, somebody that they really like a lot. Another guy that they just offered, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, Jalen Sheed out of Olive Branch High School in Mississippi. We'll see if he ends up making a trip. And another guy to we'll kind of keep an eye on. I haven't really been thinking Alabama's really in the mix there, but Michael Trigg out of Tampa area, he's a guy that got offered by Alabama's basketball program today. Also has an offer in football. So, that might intrigue him. He may want to take some visits this upcoming fall and, may take a trip to Tuscaloosa. But those are some guys to keep an eye on at the tight end position. And, there's still some guys that are committed elsewhere that they're going to try to get back on campus for official visits. Elijah Arroyo out of Texas, who's committed to Miami. Also, Jermaine Terry, who's committed to Cal, one of Alabama's top tight end targets who made a decision kind of early on. They're still going to try to work and see if he'll make a trip to Tuscaloosa, at least for an official visit or maybe even a game.
All right, Bone, our next question is coming in, and it's in regards to Jagger Burton. I know you've mentioned him a couple times in our past show. Anything new with Jagger Burton?
Nothing new. It looks like he's probably going to wait and take some visits in the fall. He wants to take some official visits, get to some programs. Kentucky had kind of been trending for him over the last couple months. Then it kind of went maybe Alabama, then maybe Ohio State. So I think as of right now, he's probably going to enjoy the recruiting process. I think Alabama is going to try to figure out where they're going to be in terms of offensive linemen because they currently have J.C. Latham on board. I think they get the Brockermeyer twins, but by the end of the summer, that's 3 offensive line commitments. Amarius Mims, the number 1 offensive lineman in the country, is going to be making a decision most likely sometime in August. That's somebody that Alabama really wants, could potentially add. I know Georgia's very high on his list as well. It's probably an Alabama-Georgia battle for him, but I think Alabama's going to wait and see what happens with him. Also see what happens with T.J. Ferguson, another guy that they're very high on out of Georgia, and William Griffin Parker, somebody that they offered back in the spring, and somebody that they also like a lot. He's out of Nashville and has a committable offer. So those are some of the top offensive line targets that they're heavily recruiting right now, that they're heavily in the mix for. And I don't see Jager Burton making a decision right now. So that may give Alabama some time to kind of figure out, where they're at on the offensive line by the time he gets ready to commit.
All right, well, in this next one, you've talked about it before, and if you're joining us, thank you very much for watching. Please hit the thumbs up and be sure and subscribe to our channel. All the coverage back at BamaInsider.com. Tony Sukalis, Tyler Waldrop back on the website do a fantastic job getting those articles to you in a timely manner. Andrew Bone taking care of the recruiting. So great staff at BamaInsider.com. We definitely love an opportunity to earn your business free. 30 days is the promo code is simply Roll Tide. You've talked about flip watches before. This one would be a gigantic one. Tumise Adelier, what's the latest on him? Does Alabama have a shot? I know they're certainly making an effort to flip one of the biggest 5 stars in the country.
Yeah, well, he's certainly a big-time target for Alabama. Has been for a long time. He visited Tuscaloosa last summer. I thought he was going to commit to Alabama. I was very confident he was picking Alabama, and then ends up transferring. He was playing out in Houston, out in Texas, and then transferred to IMG Academy for his senior season. And once he got down there, he ends up committing to Ohio State. Was supposed to visit Tuscaloosa in late March, early April. COVID hit, didn't take the trip. Ends up committing to Ohio State. I think Alabama still got a very good chance with him. I think they need to get him back on campus. The fact is Alabama now has 2 commitments at IMG Academy who are probably going to be heavily recruiting him, and J.C. Latham and Ja'Cory Brooks. But yeah, I would continue to watch that situation very closely as we go into the fall. Obviously, Ohio State, tremendous, development at the defensive line position. Put a lot of players out in the NFL, but so does Alabama. Maybe he decides to flip down the road, but I certainly think that he's one of Alabama's top targets that's still on flip watch. I wouldn't say he's going to flip right away, but he's definitely somebody that I see could potentially flip down the road.
All right, our next question is coming in, and it's on Damon Payne. And Marty asks, where does Alabama stand in the recruitment of Damon Payne?
Yeah, Damon Payne, he's one of these guys that keeps things pretty quiet. Doesn't really do many interviews, so many people don't really know what's going on in his recruitment, other than it looks like Alabama's still in the driver's seat for him. And could he commit at any moment? I certainly think so. I think he's one of these guys who we could potentially see make a decision sometime this summer. Like I said, I do believe Alabama's in the driver's seat for him. He also really likes Kentucky a lot, and he's the top 30 player in the country, and really likes the Wildcats. They signed Justin Rogers, who was a big time player, 5-star recruit last year out of Michigan, and they certainly are trying to get those guys to be an ultimate defensive line duo in Lexington. But I really like Alabama's chances with Payne, and could potentially see him committing sometime soon.
All right, our next question is regarding Monkel Goodwine, and Johnny asked, with Goodwine trending towards Texas A&M, what are other defensive line targets that are out there? And kind of give an update on Goodwine as well.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't know if I'm buying that just yet. I know Alabama's has heavily recruited him. Some people have said that they kind of slacked off and haven't really been making a big push. The push has still been happening. I mean, Nick Saban had a FaceTime call with Goodwine's head coach last week. Also had a FaceTime call with Goodwine. So he's still a top priority for Alabama, and Alabama's has been the kind of the long term leader. And I think somebody said that A&M was leading the other day, and I wasn't really buying it. I still think Alabama's got a great chance to land his commitment. There's a lot of guys that are still out there, defensive line wise, that they're heavily involved in, that they're heavily recruiting. We talked about Damon Payne just a second ago in terms of Alabama having a good chance with him. Shamar Turner, Texas defensive lineman that Alabama is very high on. He's probably going to be making an official visit to Tuscaloosa. Chambry Jackson out of Orlando, another guy. We just talked about Tumise Adelie, the Ohio State commitment that might flip to Alabama down the road. That we're continuing to keep an eye on. Also Mason Smith, even though I think everyone in the country is predicting him to go to LSU. I think you still have to recruit him, press for him, and see kind of what happens. But still a lot of great defensive linemen out there. Tim Keenan, an in-state defensive lineman. Lee Hunter, who's currently committed to Auburn. I think they probably got a long shot with him, but we'll see what happens if he ends up making a trip to Tuscaloosa this fall. But plenty of defensive linemen that are still out there, and I think when all is said and done, Alabama's going to be just fine on the defensive line. And you never know what may happen with Dallas Turner. Like I said earlier in the show, currently 6'4", 245 pounds, going into his senior season. That's kind of the size that we saw Jonathan Allen going into his senior season. Same size we saw Quinnen Williams. So we might see him, get a little bit bigger and potentially move to defensive end once he gets, once he develops a little bit and gets down to Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, Bone, when you're talking about Dallas Turner, because I was checking out his film today, and I mean, most of his plays, he's down in the dirt, chasing down quarterbacks. So, really good point there. It's obviously that it's obvious that you've done your homework. This next one, Devontae Smith, he committed on Monday, and I know that everyone got the notification. Everyone's like, Devontae Smith's already on the team. It's so funny having two players of the same name. How many more defensive backs do you think will jump on this class? I know that Devontae Smith strictly recruited as corner, as you've talked about before. Kyrie Jackson's out there. What other defensive backs are out there, and how many does Alabama plan to take in this class?
Well, that's a good question, because right now they have Devontae Smith and Kane Williams, who committed as a safety. I kind of see him as a defensive athlete. Could potentially grow into a linebacker. So, I think Alabama tries to sign, probably 5 defensive backs in this class. There's a lot of guys that are still out there. Jason Marshall's still out there. JaQuincy McKinstry, Terrion Arnold. Kyrie Jackson, who's the big time junior college target that they're heavily recruiting. Those are some guys that I could easily see joining Alabama's recruiting class. I think Latrell McCutcheon, the former Alabama commitment, is going to end up committing to Ohio State and Alabama. May still be in the race there. They still may, get him on campus for an official visit in the fall or after the season. But those are some of the top names to kind of follow along with over the course of the next, potentially a few weeks. We might see another decision or two happen, but I certainly think those are the top guys on Alabama's recruiting board. One of the top guys that Alabama was heavily recruiting, Jalen Smith from California, actually committed to USC this evening. So take him off the recruiting board right now. He hasn't visited Tuscaloosa. Maybe he gets to Tuscaloosa this upcoming year. But went ahead and made a decision for USC. Not really a major surprise there, but I think that as of right now, those are the top guys to kind of watch out for: Jason Marshall, Terrion Arnold, JaQuincy McKinstry, Kyrie Jackson.
All right, Bone. Let's see what else we got here. Oh, here we go. Time frame on Kendrick Blackshire. I know we talked about him before. Talented linebacker. Looks like things are trending obviously towards Alabama. What's the latest on him, and kind of what's a commitment time frame?
Any minute. I mean, any minute. We've been saying any minute for the last couple months, and I think that's still the case. He could another one of these guys who we could potentially see drop a commitment at any moment. I think Alabama's been trending in the right direction for him for a while. I really like Alabama's chances with him, but we just don't know when he's going to make a decision. We had thought he was going to make a decision earlier this spring. He decided to hold off because I think he wanted to take some visits. He wanted to enjoy the process this summer, take some trips and then make a decision before his senior season started. But obviously the recruiting dead period got extended, not able to take those trips. So I think we're just it's just a matter of time before he announces his decision to Alabama. So it's something that that everybody's kind of keeping their eyes open on for right now. But I still really like Alabama's chances, and I'd be surprised if it lasted much longer.
All right, Bone. Our next question is Kamar Wheaton. I think you might have mentioned it before, maybe you didn't, but can you provide an update on Kamar Wheaton, please?
Yeah, the number one running back in the country out of Texas. Alabama really hadn't been recruiting many backs other than Kamar Wheaton, Donovan Edwards out of Michigan, Evan Pryor out of North Carolina, who committed to Ohio State. Really was kind of focused on those guys for the longest time. But I think we've seen some new offers, some new running back offers get extended over the course of the last week. We saw Armani Goodwin, who's committed to Auburn, get it offered last week. And then Alton McCaskill out of Texas got offered just about an hour ago by Alabama. So I think it's kind of signifying that Alabama doesn't really feel good about where they stand with Kamar Wheaton. Donovan Edwards did an interview on Rivals earlier today and said, didn't really mention Alabama as a top school for him. So I think those guys might be fading a little bit. We'll see on Kamar Wheaton because we've heard some mixed things on him over the course of the last month. Oklahoma seems to be trending for him, but Alabama's certainly been in the mix for him for a long time. But with these new running back offers that have been extended, kind of looks like Alabama may be kind of fading in the back for him.
All right. Little shout out from Gil Cruz saying, love you guys. Keep up the great work. Bone and Kyle, you guys are the best. Now let's go get Brockmeyer Twins Kool-Aid. So thanks, Gil, for the support. We certainly appreciate it. And, it's good to see you. I know you had some great questions and great last name, by the way. Let's see what else we got. This is a good one right here. John asks, who's our top target in the state of 2021 at this point in time? I mean, that'd be Kool-Aid, obviously, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Kool-Aid, JaQuincy McKinstry. Alabama's already done a tremendous job recruiting in state. The guys that they have, currently committed on board. JaQuincy McKinstry isn't the only guy that they're still heavily recruiting in state. There's some other guys. Obviously, I just mentioned Armani Goodwin. Auburn commitment just picked up an offer. Jeremiah Williams from Ramsey High School, his teammate. Tim Keenan, another guy that they're heavily recruiting. So we'll kind of see what happens with those guys, but Kool-Aid certainly the number one guy for Alabama.
Hey, Bone, how about this? I mean, I don't think anyone has asked it yet, but I'm going to go ahead and ask you. What about, and we've had this question before, but what about the quarterback position? It seems like we're not even talking about a quarterback in this class. I'm curious about that position. What's the latest on kind of the recruitment of a quarterback from the class of 2021?
I think with Alabama, the hope is to, get one of these guys who's committed elsewhere on campus this upcoming season. Jalen Milroe, who's committed to Texas. I think Alabama's been talking to him pretty regularly. Steve Sarkisian kind of leading that charge there. Luke Altmaier, who is committed to Florida State, a little bit closer to Tuscaloosa, from Starkville High School in Mississippi. Those are two guys that they're heavily recruiting, trying to see if they'll come in for an official visit. But those are really the only guys right now. Maybe they don't end up signing a running back a quarterback in this recruiting class. But I think they're at least taking some swings right there and seeing what's going to happen.
Hey, Bone, go ahead and give your nephew a shout out.
Hey, Jack, what's up, buddy?
All right, and I'll go ahead and give my son a shout out. What's up, kid? And thanks for watching, buddy. Yeah, almost close to 34,000 subscribers right here on YouTube. So thanks, little guys, for watching. We already talked about Mims a little bit earlier. So if you want to rewatch the show, you can rewatch. Bone already talked about that. Prediction on Kool-Aid. Bone already talked about that as well.
We talk about Mims.
We didn't talk about Mims.
No. Let me talk about Mims.
Okay, take it away.
Mims. All right, let's talk about Mims. Marius Mims, number one offensive lineman in the country, according to Rivals.com. I know some people have J.C. Latham, but we'll talk about Marius Mims for a second out of Georgia. I think Alabama's. I wouldn't say they're trending, but I would say that they are in it a lot more than people think. A lot of people have kind of assumed that Georgia is the heavy favorite there, the betting favorite, even though Mims has come out and said in the past that Alabama's his leader. Now, Mims did grow up an Alabama fan. He grew up in an Alabama household, has visited Alabama several times. Now, he's visited Georgia a little bit more, but I think he's developed a very strong relationship with Kyle Flood, Alabama's offensive line coach. Could Alabama potentially sign, 3 5-star offensive linemen? That's kind of the biggest question. Because everybody assumes J.C. Latham is going to end up as a 5-star. Tommy Brockermeyer is a 5-star recruit. He's the number 10 overall player in the Rivals 100. I think he jumps on board with Alabama, pretty soon. Marius Mims is a wild card because I think that there is a chance there with Alabama, especially. You look at Alabama's offensive line right now, and the guys that are all going to be leaving after this upcoming season. You're going to lose Deontay Brown, Alex Leatherwood, Landon Dickerson. You lost Jedrick Wills in last year's class in the first round. Evan Neal, following year, probably going to be a first-round NFL draft pick. So that offensive line is going to be wide open. And everybody says, well, you can't sign 3 5-star offensive tackles. Well, why not? Can you not move somebody inside? I think that's certainly a possibility. I would not rule it out one bit. If I was making a prediction right now, I'd probably still go Georgia, but I think Alabama's right there in the mix with him. Would not rule it out one bit. I think it's starting to get very tight in his recruitment.
All right, good stuff, Bone. Corey Foreman, what's the latest on him?
I mean, I wouldn't really worry too much about him right now. Corey Foreman, the number 1 player in the country, according to Rivals.com, at defensive lineman out of California, was committed to Clemson for a long time. And, we kind of know how Clemson's program works. If you commit, you can't take visits. So he decided to reopen his recruitment so he could take visits. Now, could easily end up back at Clemson. A lot of people think that he's going to end up at USC. There's been some talk that him and Mason Smith, the number 1 defensive tackle, could potentially end up at the same school. I think it's probably all talk. I think a lot of top players talk about going to the same school. We saw that a few weeks ago. I told everybody not to pay attention to it because Dakota Mitchell, who just recently committed to Florida, said that him and Christian Leary were a package deal. Well, Christian Leary announced for Alabama. The next day, Dakota Mitchell announced for Florida. So I don't pay too much attention to a lot of these recruits that say that they're a package deal. I think all these guys are going to make their own decision and what's best for them and their family. So as of right now, wouldn't worry too much about Corey Foreman because I don't think he even has Alabama in his top 5. Now, could we potentially see some changes, this upcoming season if he takes a visit to Alabama? Very possibly. But as of right now, I certainly believe he'll end up going elsewhere.
How about this one, Bone? Alabama's class of 2022 recently picked up another commitment. Can you talk about the guys from the class of 2022?
Yeah, I think Alabama's off to a tremendous start in this 2022 recruiting class. These are guys who were just going to be juniors in high school this upcoming fall. So a long way to go with their recruitment. But both of these guys have been recruited since their freshman year. They've taken a lot of visits. So they have enjoyed the recruiting process. They didn't get to enjoy it that much this spring, but both of them are in-state guys. Jeremiah Alexander from Thompson High School. And then you have Robert Woodyard from Williamson High School down in Mobile. 2 outstanding linebackers, both extremely physical. And Robert Woodyard actually started his high school career out as a running back, and then he played running back and linebacker. He's now playing linebacker full time. He's about 6'2", 215 pounds. Jeremiah Alexander, a little bit bigger, about 6'3", about 225 pounds. But both heavily recruited. Both heavily wanted by Alabama. I think Jeremiah Alexander, probably the number 1 player in the state for next year's recruiting class, and Robert Woodyard certainly a top 5 player in the state of Alabama as well. So 2 humongous pickups early on, 2 guys that I feel like are very solid commitments for Alabama, and guys that Alabama doesn't really have to worry too much about down the road.
All right, Bone, this is another one coming in, and this is Cam RTR is asking about Kyrie Jackson. I know you've talked about the defensive backs before, but can you just kind of update everyone on who Kyrie Jackson is and kind of the status with him in his recruitment?
Yeah, Kyrie Jackson, one of the top junior college players in the country. Big defensive back, 6'3", about 195 pounds. Is a preseason first team All-American. Definitely somebody that Alabama likes a lot. I think Alabama's got the best chance to land his commitment. I had kind of been hearing Alabama, Oklahoma with him, but over the course of the last couple of weeks, really been hearing a lot about Alabama. I think they've got a great chance to land him, and he is a guy that isn't expected to graduate until next May, but I don't think that's really going to be too big of an issue for Alabama. Most of the time, they like for their junior college guys to come in, for spring, but I think he's going to be just fine if he's able to come in next May. But as of right now, still predicting him to Alabama. That he had set up a commitment. I think it was going to be on July the 11th. But then tweeted out a couple weeks ago that the commitment date was off. Not really sure why, but maybe it's because he was going to do something a little bit sooner. So we'll see if maybe he makes a decision here in the next week or so.
All right, now this user is asking about Alabama making a run at the #1 overall position in the recruiting rankings. Might be far fetched, but probably not a top 5 class. I mean, the way that Alabama is putting everything together, so much momentum, so many guys still left on the board. As you know, and as Bone has talked about, Rivals is going to update their rankings. So a lot of those guys who might be 3 stars or 4 stars are going to be 5 stars or 4 stars. Bone, what do you think of this class right now? And if you're an Alabama fan out there, I mean, you have to be so excited going into the month of July, just with the amount of momentum that Alabama has in the summertime.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just pointed out that the rankings are going to change. We're going to see some of these guys that are 4 stars, potentially move up to 5 stars, some 4 stars who may, be inside the 250, may potentially move into the Rivals 100, and maybe some 3 stars. Like Devontae Smith, makes a serious move, potentially all the way into the Rivals 100 once the rankings are updated. So I think that's going to be key there. But it's also going to be key. Can Alabama potentially go in and get Amarius Mims from Georgia? Can they, maybe get Mason Smith out of Louisiana? That's probably more of a long shot right now, but there's a lot of talent that's out there that they're heavily involved in. Most of these guys are 4 and 5 star recruits. I mean, I think they're going to get Tommy Brockermeyer and James Brockermeyer on board. That's a 5 star and a 4 star recruit, just out of the same family. So I think Alabama's got a real chance to make a serious move. And I know everybody's been worried the last couple months about Alabama's recruiting class, and they weren't recruiting up to par. Well, what do we think about it now? I think things have significantly changed. I think they're going to significantly change over the course of the next month or two, and I think Alabama fans are going to be extremely excited. And I think the best is yet to come for Alabama in this recruiting class, and they can potentially challenge for that #1 overall spot. I know a lot of people said Ohio State has it locked up, it's over, but I wouldn't say that just yet. I mean, what happens if potentially Alabama flips to Misay Delier? I mean, there's a lot of things that can happen over the course between now and signing day, and I think Alabama's gearing up for a top 5 finish, top 3 finish, and potentially even #1 class.
Bone, next question coming in from Jack asking about the latest on Jason Marshall and if he's still a possibility in this class.
Yeah, absolutely. And, he's another guy that, that I failed to mention just now. I mean, you get a guy like Jason Marshall out of South Florida, has Alabama, Florida, and Clemson in his top 3. I think it's really a top 2 between Alabama and Florida. Now, a lot of people think he stays in state, goes to Florida, but I think he's got a great relationship with the Alabama coaching staff. We're seeing what Alabama's doing in the state of Florida right now, and it's just complete domination. You get another South Florida guy on board tomorrow, potentially, in Dallas Turner. You just don't know what's going to happen the rest of the way. If Dallas Turner commits to Alabama, that's 5 players from the state of Florida who are committed. I think they could potentially end up with 10 players from Florida. The amount of guys that they're still heavily going after, they're very much involved in, they could easily sign. So I think it could be a banner year in the state of Florida. And Jason Marshall is certainly a guy that I think got a good, or better, great chance to end up in Alabama's recruiting class.
All right. Alexander asks on Jaredon Gilbert and the latest update on his recruitment.
Yeah, Jordan Gilbert, very talented defensive back out of the state of Louisiana. Has had an Alabama offer for a while. Visited Tuscaloosa back for junior day earlier this year. I actually kind of thought he was close to making a decision, but decided to hold off. I think a lot's going to kind of depend on what happens with some of these other defensive backs and when he decides to make a commitment. Because when he decides to make a commitment, Alabama could easily have 4, maybe even 5 defensive backs on board at the time. But I definitely think Alabama's in the race for him. I think a lot's just going to depend on when he decides to make a decision.
All right, I hate to put you on the spot, Bone, but Dorsey asking, other than Dallas Turner potentially committing tomorrow, who else could be committing this week if there is another commitment? Everyone wants to know it. Got to ask it.
Well, there's always some guys that we're keeping an eye on. If I'm a betting man and we're putting, a list of guys together who could potentially commit this week, I think you have to throw out Kendrick Blackshire. I think you have to put in Kyrie Jackson. Always put in Kool-Aid because you just never know when Kool-Aid will make a decision. Brian Thomas is another guy that could potentially make a decision. Now he's kind of told some people that nothing's going to happen, but you never know how that may play out. Some of these guys say that they're not going to make a decision, and then boom, they commit. So those are some guys that we're keeping a close eye on, and we're going to see what happens. But I would expect. Not just I think we're going to see more than one commitment the rest of the week. I think Dallas Turner jumps on board with Alabama tomorrow, and I think we'll probably see somebody else jump on board later this week. What time is Dallas Turner announcing? Dallas Turner is announcing at noon Central tomorrow. So we'll have it wall-to-wall coverage on BamaInsider.com on Dallas Turner's decision if he commits to Alabama.
All right. We talked about Sage Ryan last week. If you can just provide another update on him. I think this is the first time his name's been mentioned on the show.
Yeah, I should have included him as one of Alabama's top defensive back targets. He certainly is. Probably going to be a little tough, just because of his, family connections at LSU. Kevin Falk, LSU's running backs coach, is his cousin and, in charge of his recruitment. So I think his uncle is also his high school head coach. So very, very difficult circumstances. But I know he likes Alabama a lot. Alabama's probably in his top 2, top 3. Don't really see him making a decision right now. I think he's going to kind of wait it out a little bit. But Alabama's in the race. But in the end, I kind of see him committing to LSU.
All right. Another question from Johnny coming in, and the question is regarding Tristan Lay. What's the latest on him?
Yeah, one of the top offensive linemen out of the DMV area. I just hadn't seen Alabama make this crazy push for him. I know Alabama's had some FaceTime calls with him and has been communicating, and he visited campus. But as of right now, I think he ends up going somewhere else because Alabama's kind of, expressed just so much more attention on these other guys right now. Guys like Amarius Mims and the Brockermeyer twins and TJ Ferguson and William Parker Griffin, those are some guys that they're heavily going after that I think they're kind of waiting to see what those guys do. So I think as of right now, there's a lot of talk that Tristan Lee is probably going to end up at LSU, and that would probably be my guess at this time.
Bone, we've had so many questions in the comment box, and we haven't really talked about him, but Latrell McCutcheon, if you could just kind of talk about him when he was committed to Alabama, what's kind of the status update on him, what you think is going to end up happening with him. It is an interesting, kind of situation in such a talented prospect to track.
Latrell McCutcheon committed to Alabama last summer after he attended Alabama's camp. I think he ended up coming back for the cookout and committed during that weekend, if I remember correctly. But ended up decommitting from Alabama in March. I heard a big reason for that was because of the loss of Scott Cochran. But I heard that over the last few months that his relationship with the new strength staff has been very positive. Really likes those guys a lot. But I think there's a lot of momentum with Oklahoma with him, and really has been since he decommitted. I'd be shocked if he doesn't commit to Oklahoma, likely within the next week. That's kind of my prediction on him. Now, I still think Alabama could be in it down the road. I think he'll end up taking an official to Alabama. But if he makes a decision within the next week, I think it's going to be for Oklahoma.
All right, Bone. And as we kind of wind out the show, you can still get your questions in. We'll be around for a few more minutes, but we've talked with several prospects that are in the class 2021, 2022 that continue to say positive things about the new strength and conditioning coach, David Ballou and Matt Ray. How much do you think that's really impacting and helping Alabama from a recruiting standpoint? It seems like these guys are really helping a lot of momentum in the summertime and providing a lot of excitement, not only for the guys that are returning for the 2020 season, but that could potentially commit to Alabama.
Yeah, I thought that it was going to be very difficult for for them to develop their relationships with recruits who have not visited Tuscaloosa or who haven't visited Tuscaloosa since they took over. But it seems like it kind of went the complete opposite. All I've heard from recruits all across the country is just how impressive these guys are, how innovative they are. The science that they kind of bring to the table, and just how impressive these recruits have been about them. I think it's just a complete change, and I think it's been for the good. And I think Alabama fans should be excited about this new strength staff, and it's certainly paying off on the recruiting trail. And every dad that I've talked to, of different recruits that are out there that Alabama's still heavily going after, guys that aren't even committed yet, have been just so impressed with what these guys have brought to the table so far.
Yeah, I myself, I mean, if you follow Dr. Matt Ray, I mean, some of his tweets, they're over your head. I mean, the guy is like so scientific. I can only imagine like how that's going to translate to guys that are already fast on the team, like a Jalen Waddle or, guys who have such explosive speed. I mean, the article that Tyler Waldrop wrote yesterday talking about that they could get him from a 4.3 to a 4.2. I mean, that's just mind blowing that they have that technology to look how fast he is on film. We got a couple more questions coming in. Paul's going to ask right here, Bone, are we recruiting William Griffin Parker as an offensive guard?
Yeah, one of these kids that Alabama was really hoping to see in camp to kind of figure that out. That's kind of the case with a lot of these guys, especially in the defensive backfield. There was a lot of kind of hybrids that they were wanting to bring on campus this summer and figure out if they were corners or safeties. And now you just kind of recruit them and if you can get them signed, figure it out kind of down the road. And I think that's kind of the case with William Griffin Parker. I guess that's how you say it, William Griffin Parker. I think I've been saying William Parker Griffin for the last hour or so, but yeah, I mean, he's certainly a guy that Alabama really likes a lot. On the offensive line, could play tackle, could play guard. I don't see him playing center, but definitely somebody that they have very high interest in, and definitely somebody that they would take a commitment from right now. And we talk about all these other guys that they're recruiting, these top level guys, like Mims and the Brockermeyers and TJ Ferguson. He's certainly a guy that they really like a lot as well, and they would take a commitment from.
All right. We got one from Tyler coming in. Tyler, appreciate the question. Michael Triggs.
Yeah, Michael Trigg, talked about him a little bit earlier in the show, a tight end out of Tampa. Just got offered in Alabama basketball this evening. Also has an offer in Alabama football as well. He hasn't really mentioned Alabama as a top school for him. Kind of interested to talk to him a little bit more, kind of figure out, does this offer in Alabama basketball maybe change things for him? Does he want to at least, maybe wait it out, take some visits this fall? We'll kind of see, but as of right now, not banking on him. But maybe the basketball offer changes things a little bit. We'll see if he makes a trip to Tuscaloosa this fall.
All right, good stuff, Bone. I mean, I think it's been a great show. We've answered a lot of questions, covered a lot of territory. Tomorrow, obviously, a big day with Dallas Turner committing. So be sure and stay logged on to BamaInsider.com. New month, and hopefully, Alabama continues to have a strong push on the recruiting side. Bone, did you have fun tonight?
Always, man.
Always. Yeah, always.
Fun to take questions, answer to the best of our knowledge. We may be wrong sometimes, but we try to be right. So hopefully, some of these things come to fruition for Alabama, and I think it's going to be a great recruiting class, 100%.
Definitely. Thank you so much for watching tonight. He's Andrew Bone. I'm Kyle Henderson, BamaInsider.com. Remember, if you want to get behind that pesky paywall, free 30 days, promo code Simply Roll Tide. We'd love to have an opportunity to earn your business. No better way than try out the website for free. 30 days. Big day tomorrow with Dallas Turner Committee. You can catch Andrew Bone and myself back at BamaInsider.com. Have a good night, everyone. Be safe. Take care of each other. We'll catch you soon next time on BamaInsider.com.